Chapter 1. The magnificent palace doors opened abruptly, with force. Inside the decorated room, the throne room, sat a young emperor. His green, scaly face was emotionless up until this moment. Now there was definite anger in his expression. "Who dares to barge into the throne room uninvited? I'll have you executed!" He shouts at the perpetrator, not putting into account that the guards would have stopped anyone from stepping close to those doors without permission. Well, anyone except for one single person. A veteran and esteemed military man, a brilliant general, an uncle. The man who stood in the throne room now, taller even than the guards, his face scarred with missing scales. Being blind in one eye and in retirement long past his prime has not stopped him from adorning his military uniform. "Nephew, you are making a mistake," the man said with a stern tone as if lecturing a child. "Insolent fool," the young emperor replied with vitriol. "You dare to barge into the throne room unannounced and then proceed to insult me, the emperor? Haven't your years of military service taught you about the basics of royal courtesy? I have never expected you to be such a spoiled brat. I would have even turned a blind eye to all your tomfoolery if it wasn't for this," the old man said. "Guards, take him away. I have important business to attend to," the emperor said, gesturing with his hand that they throw him out. But unlike in any other case where the guards would do so without hesitation, this time they seemed hesitant, looking at each other as to who will be the first to act upon the order. "Are you deaf? Take him away now!" the emperor shouted, his voice reverberating through the throne room. One of the guards stepped forward, but before he could make so much as another step, the old man looked at him, stared at him with no emotion whatsoever. "Stand down, soldier," he said with a calm tone. The soldier stopped in his tracks. Silence befell the room. All right. Uncle, what is the reason for your unceremonious visit?" the young emperor asked. "Do you understand what you have ordered is not only breaking a pact, but is the sole decision that will bring this nation down? You will destroy it, all of it," the old general said, his sternness and stoic stance not leaving him for a moment. "Oh, is it about the so-called humans, that little puny race of apes? You seek to protect them?" the emperor said in a mocking tone. "I am not here to protect them. I am here to protect this nation and its people," the old man said as if reciting that very sentence for the millionth time. "You are aware that they haven't been at war for 50 cycles? Or 93 of their years? I've even given them the time of day to learn their little calendar." The emperor raised his finger as if learning the enemy's calendar is an achievement to boast about. "Their fleets are nothing compared to ours. Their army is ceremonial, nothing else but a show of power where none exists," the emperor said once more, mockingly. The old general stared at him. He squinted his eyes. "My nephew, if you have learned about the enemy so much, then tell me about the wars they waged before. Their tactics, the composition of their armies. Tell me about the humans. What are they like? Have you ever seen a human in person?" the old general asked his nephew whilst leaning forward. He looked at him inquisitively. "Well," the emperor began, "they lost many wars, they won some. But it was always known in advance they would win. It is obvious when you see the statistics, when you look at the numbers, the technological disparity. Our fleets are more advanced than theirs, by every metric. It has been proven. Intelligence does not lie, and best of all, we outnumber them," the emperor said, this time trying to give a serious answer to his uncle. "You did not answer my question," the old man said. "You know, there is a quote from a human general who lived a long time ago. It goes like this: if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle." Now, my nephew, you have proven to know neither yourself nor the enemy. The conclusion then is rather simple, the old man said. The emperor stared at him in shock, his face giving the expression that he has been surprised and utterly destroyed by the retort, before bursting out laughing. "You," the emperor said in between coughs, "you come here to enlighten me about military matters, and then," he snickers, You tell me a human quote. You have chosen the wrong career path, uncle. You would have become a great comedian. You have not seen war. You have not seen death. You have not seen suffering. I am not here to entertain you. I am here. The old man paused, closing his eyes and bowing his head to the ground before lifting it back up. I will not let you declare war on the Terran Federation, because you will only bring the aforementioned war, death, and suffering, and it will all be for nothing. You won't let me, the Emperor, do as I please? The young Emperor said. Do you know what you have just said qualifies as treason of the highest order? Yes, I know, but I'm not here to give orders to an emperor. I am here to lecture my nephew and to stop him from making a mistake that will leave millions dead. Guards, please, just take him away. The Emperor said with an irritated tone. The humans have never lost a damned war, the old man shouted. Never lost? I'm pretty sure they have. They have just been lucky for the wins. The Emperor replied, You do not know history well at all. They did lose wars. But look at any empire or nation that had attacked them. They won, some of them, but all collapsed soon thereafter. Humans fight with such ferocity that it would be better to have them as allies, not enemies. I know that you seek glory and more space for our people, but we have enough. Even if you were to win, it would come at a cost so great that it could never be repaid. Not even the war of the heavens would come close to the brutality. Uncle, my dear uncle, you are embarrassing yourself, the Emperor replied with fake empathy. The old general looked at his nephew. His eyes became wide. His stoic expression gave way to that of anger. You idiotic brat! Do you understand that you will destroy everything your father built? Do you know what he sacrificed to have peace? Do you know what I sacrificed so that this nation does not burn? The Emperor simply looked at his uncle with an indifferent expression. Guard. He pointed to one of the guards who stepped forward. Send the message that all available troops be mobilized to the border of the Terran Federation. We are going to war. The guard bowed and began walking toward the palace doors to relay the message. Before he could come close to the doors, he was grabbed by the old general. You are not going anywhere, the old man said. Guards, take him away. He is impeding the relay of a royal decree. The Emperor said this time the guards did not hesitate. They came forward and grabbed the old man. He struggled, but despite his large stature, his body was old. He was weak. What are you doing? Are you all insane? He shouted. Nephew, what have you done? The old man now had no anger in his voice. Rather, it was desperation. It was pleading. They know that you are coming. They are listening. They know themselves. They know us. He was being dragged across the floor, coming closer to the palace doors. Our people have suffered enough. Have you got no heart, nephew? Please. The palace doors opened, and he was dragged out. You don't know what you are doing. You do not know what they are like. The doors started slowly closing. I've fought with them then. 50 cycles ago, the war of heaven. They are... His voice was silenced, and the doors closed shut. Silence was once more present in the throne room. The young emperor sighed deeply. Advisor Kamaz, the emperor said. Out of the shadows, a figure appeared. His face was covered in a mask. Everything is according to plan? The emperor asked. Oh, yes, my lord. Everything is going exactly to plan. I have sent the message to the generals. Tomorrow, everything is ready. The humans won't know what hit them, the figure said. I hope so. I'm looking forward to seeing their fleets dissolve and burn, the emperor said with a smile. Oh, they will, my lord. They will burn, the dark figure said. I can already smell the ashes, my lord. Chapter 2. The stale and dry air, the dry breaths and heaves of an old man. He sits in a prison cell, sitting on the cold and hard ground. This cell unfitting for a member of the royal family, let alone a national hero. Though long past are the days of his greatness. He had enough glory in his life. He was tired. He is not the man who once commanded armies and fleets, the man who led his nation to victory against all odds, the man who helped create an empire that he believed would stand the test of time. But now he sits there, unable to accept what was happening, unable to believe it. Just like that all of his and his brother's work was to be undone, All the sacrifices of his friends, his comrades, and countrymen was going to be thrown away? He reminisced on days long past. He remembered the days when they, the Phrygians, only inhabited 4 systems. He remembered the rivalry forged with the humans. He remembers when he saw them as worthy enemies. He remembers when the System League attacked under the pretense of reunification, clinging to some sort of golden age that was eons ago. He remembers when the human and Phrygian hands clasped together, enemies who would have ripped each other apart now fighting shoulder to shoulder against slavery, against extinction. He remembers the war of heaven when the ships blotted out suns, when planets were grounded to dust, when billions perished. He was there, he saw it with his own eyes, felt it on his own skin. He knew what it meant. He did not want to see it again, never again. He fought not to conquer what was in front of him, but to protect what is behind him. He bleeds so that future generations don't need to. How foolish I am to say that I was all of that. I still am. He thought to himself, his fists clenched with righteous fury. He did not blame his nephew. He knew something else was at play, though he knew he could not save him. I drew a deep breath, then exhaled slowly, calming himself down. He looked at the electric cuffs put on his hands. It is impossible to break out of them. A titanium alloy which even an industrial saw can't cut through, and an electronic lock that could be unlocked with a key and the identification of the one who unlocks it. But he knew these cuffs well, and the guards overlooked one thing when patting him down. His medals are not only for show. He always prided himself on being ready for any situation. This was no exception. He grabbed one of his medals as if fixing them on his uniform. But instead, he was extracting a small pin from it. It was as thin as paper, nearly invisible, but it was heavy, at least heavier than one would expect from such a small pin. "Guard," he said with a defeated tone. The guard in front of his cell pressed a button on a panel next to the cell door, activating the microphone. "What?" the guard said simply. "I would like some water," the old man said. The guard was silent for a moment before replying, "Can't you go drink yourself? The water fountain is right there." The guard pointed to the other corner of the cell where the water fountain was. I don't have the strength. I am sorry. Could you please bring me some water?" the old man said weakly. The guard sighed and looked around. "Oh, all right, give me a moment." "Don't do anything funny," the guard said. He then deactivated the microphone. The old man could no longer hear him, but he saw him speak into his helmet microphone. He was probably calling for someone to stand watch outside. After a few moments, another guard came down the hallway, and the old man could see him chat with the first guard for a few moments. He saw the second guard look at him. He nodded at him. Then he lowered one hand from his rifle and made specific and deliberate hand gestures with his 6 fingers. The old man recognized them. He smiled briefly. The doors unlocked, and he could now hear the outside. The first guard entered the cell and grabbed a cup from a small table inside the room. He went to the water fountain and filled it with water. Once he came close to the old man, he knelt down and tried to hand over the cup of water. The old man just looked at him, his hands resting in between his legs. "Do I have to?" the guard asked. The old man simply nodded and said, "I apologize," under his breath. The guard pressed the cup to the old man's lips, and he began drinking. "By the gods! General Crifter Anreded Perendian. I joined the army looking up at you. Now here I am looking down at you, helping you drink water because you have no strength to do it yourself," the guard said with a condescending tone. As the old man drank, he put the small pin into an extremely small hole in the cuffs. It is basically invisible to an average observer. It would be very difficult to get it on the first try because of the small size of both the pin and hole, but the old General Crifter's hands were steady as ever. The cup left Crifter's lips. He drank the cup dry. "I again must apologize," Crifter said. No need," the guard replied. "Not for that," Crifter said. The moment the last vowel left his mouth, he pressed the pin into the hole, disrupting the electric current and unlocking the cuffs. Within a blink of an eye, he punched the guard in the head, stunning him. And then he grabbed the rifle from the stunned guard. The guard quickly got back to his feet. "What the—" Before he could finish his exclamation, the other guard used the stock of his rifle to hit him directly into the face, knocking him out. Crifter nodded to the guard and got straight to the point. Cameras? They're on loop, sir. Excellent. I need to get out of here. Try to stop this from escalating into a damn war, Crifter said. I agree, sir. There's a ship ready to leave for orbit. The guard was cut off. No, it'll take too much time, and I must stay here. Any other options? Come on, we're running out of time. Well, the old drainage system. I can take you to the nearest entrance. Good. If there are any more of you, tell them to wait for me at the exit. We need to get organized, and we need to be quick. Lead the way. Yes, sir. Sector 7, border of the Phrydian Empire and Terran Federation capital ship. Arvinid Gwitch, 1709 hours. Earth time, EST. What's up with the abrupt training exercise? A red-scaled Phrydian soldier said while eating on his bunk bed. I don't know. There were no scheduled exercises for at least a third of a cycle. And if it was suddenly rescheduled, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have half the damn fleet involved. Another green-scaled soldier said, sitting opposite the first soldier. Half the fleet? I heard that the army was also mobilized. Some kind of combined arms training? For what? The red-scaled one said. Probably. We're quite close to the border as well. By the gods, why on the border with the humans of all places? We have like at least a dozen empty systems where we can shoot as much as we please. The green-scaled one said. What do you think? Are we going to war with the humans? The red-scaled one said, putting down his plate. War? With the humans? The green-scaled one leaned in. Are you insane? First off, they are basically our allies. Well, not officially, but we're buddies despite the bad blood between us. We were allies in the War of Heaven. I didn't hear any news about some escalation. Trade, while it is limited, is going fine. My grandfather lives on a station near the border, actually, and he met a few human traders. Fine folk, he says. The green-scaled soldier replied, I don't know, man. It all seems... The red-scaled soldier thought of a good word to describe it, but the green-scaled one broke his train of thought. Listen, it's nothing. There was no war or tension for the past 50 damn cycles. We do whatever the higher-ups want from us, then we go home. Yeah, I guess you're right, the red-scaled soldier replied with uncertainty in his voice. After a few minutes of chit-chat, they heard an announcement from the speakers all across the ship. All personnel prepare for warp entry. I repeat, all personnel prepare for warp entry. The two soldiers looked at the speakers, then at each other. Warp? The red-scaled one said, Where are we pointing the thrusters? The green-scaled one asked. The red-scaled one was silent for a few seconds before replying, I think, yeah, from the last I saw our position. The green-scaled stared at his comrade, his mouth agape. Shit, I need to call my parents. Sector 7, border of the Phrydian Empire and Terran Federation capital ship Arvinid Gwitch control tower 2 minutes earlier. An admiral was sitting in his command chair, anxiously looking at his panel every few minutes while the rest of the personnel obliviously worked like ants around him. Check weapon status again, the admiral said. Sir, we already checked 3 times. All is positive. One of the personnel said, confused. Just do it again? That's an order. The admiral replied, the light green female just nodded before going ahead to check the status of the weapons for the 4th time. As the moments ticked by, tension was building up. No one knew why, except for the admiral himself. Just as he was about to ask for status, his panel lit up. He saw an incoming call from the Emperor himself. He quickly put on his earphones and answered. His Majesty's Admiral Hasgwern at your service, the admiral said as quietly as he could. But he could feel the looks of his crew. They heard him all right. Hasgwern, Admiral, I call you to see if you finally managed to ready yourselves for the operation. The rest of the fleet is ready. You, as the avant-garde, had to be ready first. What's taking so long? The young Emperor said with frustration in his voice. My Emperor, we are doing one last check before... The Admiral was cut off. I do not care! I need you to be ready at a moment's notice! The Emperor shouted. The Admiral winced at the sudden change of tone in the Emperor's voice. Yes, Your Majesty, the Admiral said. Stop the check, the Admiral exclaimed. Your Majesty, we're waiting for your green light, the Admiral said. Excellent. You may proceed with the operation. Show the arrogant humans a taste of Fyndian shock combat, the Emperor said. Yes, Your Majesty, the Admiral said. He pressed a button on his panel before speaking. This is Admiral Hasgwern to all ships in the 1st, 2nd, 7th, 10th, 16th, and 19th Royal Flotilla. Prepare engines for warp speed. Destination Sector 7, 233,803. Sector 7, Terran Federation, Achilles Station, 5 minutes earlier. Sir, we're getting some strange readings, a man said, sitting on a panel, surrounded by screens showing various graphs. What is it? Where is it? An older man asked as he leaned on the screens, his vision going from one to another. He didn't exactly understand what he was seeing. Sir, the sharp increase in activity we saw 2 days ago stopped rising, the man on the panel said. That's on the border with kobolds, right? The Frindians, the older man said. Correct. We suspect that it might be a military exercise, but the amount seems excessive. We would have also been informed by the Frindian government in advance, which we were not. Our estimates vary, but there might be at least 1,200 ships on the border in Sector 7. We just got info from Sector 8 that they also see the same thing, the man said, his voice almost robotic. They ain't going to attack, aren't they? The older man chuckled as if telling a joke. We're in a non-aggression pact, but this could be an international incident. I don't know. I'll inform the government back on Earth and see what they'll say about this. Continue to monitor the situation. The older man continued. Yes, sir, the man replied in the same monotone voice. Moments later, just as the older man was going toward the exit, another person entered the room, a rather tall and lanky man in a black suit. Government, the older man thought to himself. The tall, lanky man introduced himself and then asked, You are Trevor Macaulay, correct? Yes, that's me. What do you need? Trevor replied. Then this is for you. The man in the black suit handed over an envelope with large red letters reading, Urgent. Trevor scratched his graying hair as he looked at the envelope, then promptly opened it up right then and there. In the envelope was a piece of paper. Trevor's eyes jumped back and forth as he read the paper, his eyes progressively getting wider. He murmured something to himself. Hayashi! Trevor exclaimed. A short Asian man peered above a computer screen on the other side of the room. Yeah? He replied. We need to increase readiness in Sector 7 and 8. This isn't good, Trevor said. What do you mean? Why? Hayashi replied. Kid, the spike in activity, Trevor said when he was cut off by a message on his phone. He got it out and read it. Shit, he said through his teeth. Listen, everyone, I need all available units in the area to mobilize. We are in DEFCON 2. I repeat. I need all units mobilized. We are facing possible intrusion on our territory by a large armed force, Trevor yelled. Everyone in the room went silent, probably from shock. What the fuck are you all staring at? Get to work, he shouted. Everyone was put out of their temporary trance, out of their disbelief, and began to frantically do their jobs. Sir! The man on the panel monitoring the activity on the border yelled, this time with obvious urgency in his voice. What's the situation, Schmidt? Trevor ran across the room to Schmidt, looking at the screens. He could see an abrupt change in the graphs. It wasn't good. There are ripples in space that can only be... Wait, warp. These are warp marks. A lot of them, Schmidt said, now with evident fear in his otherwise monotone voice. They are going in en masse. Fucking hell! Trevor raised his head and looked around. He knew all too well that Achilles Station is going to be among the first attacked. And that attack was going to happen soon, very soon. They only had a few hours max until the wrath of the Fyndian fleet was laid upon them. Ladies and gentlemen, he began with an authoritative voice. From this moment forward onward, we are officially in a state of war with the Fyndian Empire. In a few hours, it is extremely likely this station and the space around it will become a battlefield. I suggest you prepare and call any loved ones to inform them of the situation. Sir, what do we do now? One voice from the room asked. Trevor looked at all his crew, his friends, and his comrades. Their defenses are limited, and their armaments are not enough to stave off a major offensive. We hold, no matter the cost. They never lost. Chapter 3. The moist air and the horrid smell, despite these tunnels being decommissioned centuries prior, it seems the smell still lingers, especially after it rains. It is a far cry from the stale air of the prison. The sterile look of the prison reminded him more of a hospital than a prison. Crifter used a towel to cover his mouth and nostrils to somehow prevent the smell from entering with his breaths, but it did little to nothing to prevent the abhorrent stench from invading his lungs. By the gods, how much longer? He asked himself in his thoughts, as he trudged on through the wet tunnels, doing his best to orient himself in that maze. The guard, bless his soul, gave him an old map of the tunnels. He had to stop every once in a while to look at the map and confirm if he is going the right way. It had been more than half an hour since he entered the tunnels, and he was trying to be as quick as possible. Every moment he spent trying to get out of these damned tunnels was a moment wasted on preventing the catastrophe unfolding above. Every moment lost was a life or a dozen lost. His old bones were straining from today's exercise, if you could call it that. All he wanted was to rest. He wanted to end this madness as quickly as possible. As he walked hastily while trying to be discreet in his movement so as to not accidentally trigger any sensors, if there are any down here, he asked himself, what if I am too late? The thought haunted him. If the war started, he could do nothing that came to mind, at least. As he dwelled on that thought, he turned a corner in one of the countless halls of the tunnels. A light, other than his flashlight, came into sight. Finally, he said out loud. He checked his map once more. This should be it. He walked forward with each step coming closer to the blinding light. He could not see what was on the outside yet. All of a sudden he saw a silhouette, a shadow cast on the entrance. He stopped for a moment, thinking if the person who made it was the one who was awaiting to rescue him, or a person awaiting to imprison him again. Or worse. Despite his paranoia, he continued forward. General Crifter? He heard a voice echo from the entrance. He didn't respond. He continued walking forward. As he approached, he could see the person at the entrance more clearly. It wasn't a guard, not even a soldier. It was a civilian, shabbily dressed. Reaching the exit to the tunnels, he realized immediately that he ended up in the slums. General Crifter, is you? The voice asked once more. Yes, he responded simply. Thank the gods, you made it. I started to get worried. The young light green-scaled male said. You're with the soldier, right? Crifter asked. Yes, I'm with Guaredwar, the young man said. I don't know the lad's name, but I take your word for it. Right, we don't have time to waste. He said you've got a transport ship? Crifter asked the young man. Yes, it's under the bridge on the other side, the young man said, pointing in an arbitrary direction. How long will it take? To get to the ship, I mean? Crifter asked. Well, 5 minutes. 10 if we take it slow. We ain't going slow, kid. Lead the way. The young man nodded and started walking down a large pipe. As Crifter followed, he saw that they were right under one of the highways going through the slums. A veritable city of its own was made on the outskirts of the city in less than a few cycles. Ever since his nephew came to power. There were hundreds of smaller ships going above, mostly transports, some civilian. As they walked toward his escape vessel, Crifter asked, Hey, what is your name? Enaid Fonk, sir, the young man replied. All right, Enaid, who's piloting the ship? You seem too young to have passed the piloting test? Crifter asked. Oh, no, I won't be flying. My brother is the one who's piloting the thing. He was in the fighter pilot's corps but failed the final test. So here he is, Enaid replied. Oh, great, Crifter said, trying to hide his disappointment, though he was aware of the fact that he could not expect some professional to come at a moment's notice, especially if taking into account the current circumstances. This plan for his rescue was hatched within hours of his arrest. As he thought about it, if everything goes well, he'll need to vouch for the ones who made this reality. To find out about his arrest, which was covered up in the media, is difficult in of itself. But creating a plan, finding the people to adequately make it possible, and of course executing it professionally. He applauds everyone involved, so no, he is not complaining. Sir, he's a good pilot. Don't worry. Soon enough, they entered a covered-up area right after the highway. It looked like a large entrance to another tunnel of some sort. He couldn't see anything in that tunnel, but as he got closer, the darkness concealing it almost perfectly was a ship from a long-past age. But it looked to be taken care of well, with some minor modifications. As he got a better look at it, he realized something. How did you... I won't ask, actually. Crifter asked. In front of him was an old military fighter designed for both atmospheric and space combat. Looking at it was nostalgic. He flew those back in the day. He saw the first prototypes made during the War of Heaven. They were almost as ancient as himself. Does it even fly? Crifter asked again. Pretty sure it does, Enaid replied before shouting, Harrier, are you there? After a few moments, some sounds reverberated through the tunnel, sounds of clanking metal. Yeah, is the general with you? The voice replied. Yeah, light it up, he's getting on, Enaid replied. The only reply was the sound of more clanking metal. Enaid gestured to Crifter to follow him. They ran toward the old fighter. Crifter's legs were burning from the strain. He couldn't wait to sit down. Damn it all, I am out of shape, he thought to himself. As he reached the foot of the ship, Enaid stopped. Sir, it has been an honor. I am leaving you to my brother, for Frindia. He saluted. Thank you, Enaid. Good luck to you as well, Crifter said as he jumped on the wing of the fighter. The fighter turned on, its engines slowly coming to life. He opened up the hatch and sat down into the craft before closing it above him. General Crifter! It is an honor, sir. My name is Harrier Ifank. Once again, it is an honor, sir. The pilot turned his head. He was slightly older than Enaid, and his scales had a slightly darker green color. Thank you, Henrier. No need for formalities. Let's get going. We've got no time to waste, Crifter responded. Yes, sir, Henrier replied as he pulled a lever, the engines now screaming to life. The fighter slowly lifted off the ground and exited the tunnel. We're going to go through the alleys. We're going on minimal power, so hopefully the drones won't detect us. The patrols are probably increased. They must have realized that you're not in your cell anymore, Harrier said as he typed in some coordinates into a console. I'm taking you to an outpost on the fringes of the slums. They'll help you try and stop this. Henrier continued as he slowly steered the ship into a dark and dirty alley between old industrial buildings turned into improvised housing. He looked down into the industrial sewer. From this view, he knew where he was exactly. The demolished buildings around were bustling factories when he was young. Below, he saw Enaid look at the ship, saluting the ship. The expression he wore was that of uncertainty, but it also had a glint of hope. How long was this outpost online? I wasn't aware of organized resistance to the Royal Crown? Crifter asked. As Henrier steered carefully between the tight walls of the old alley, he replied, Ever since the death of Emperor Arvinid Gwitch, we are certain that it wasn't of natural causes. He was assassinated, and his son, the current emperor, was put on the throne on the whims of a foreign power. Assassinated? Crifter said in disbelief. How? He did nothing but good for this nation. He saved it from certain collapse. I understand your sentiments, sir. We thought the same. In the first months, if you told us that the emperor was assassinated, we would have told you you were insane. But as some information slowly started to leak out, we started to connect the dots. If you weren't aware of that conspiracy theory, well, that also has a reason. There were some shady characters at play trying to cover it up. We lost many good people to them. They were especially careful as to not allow any ideas to pop up in the minds of any of the royal family members, such as yourself, Henrier said. I don't understand. Who would do this? And why is Mab Plentin, my nephew, doing this? Was he manipulated? Crifter asked. I am almost certain, sir. We had theories it could be the Armandians. We had some disagreements with them a few cycles ago, if you remember, but nothing to warrant such extreme action. The humans were also pointed out as being the ones behind it all, considering their history. But, as you know, that theory goes down the drain once you take account of this fucking situation. Excuse my language, Henrier said apologetically. A fucking shit show of a situation this is indeed. You said nothing wrong. Just get me there as soon as possible. We might still have time, Crifter said. How foolish was I? Why was I so naive? How could I not think of that? No. It would be insane. There was no possibility of something like that happening. By the gods, I'm sorry, my brother, for failing you like this, Crifter thought to himself. The severity of the situation was now settling in. This wasn't just a war with former allies, some still even call them that. This was something much deeper. As he was lost in thought, Henrier piloted the craft through the alleys of the capital as they slowly inched their way to the outpost. Suddenly, Henrier stopped the vessel dead in its tracks at some sort of intersection of the alleys. What is it? Why did you stop? Crifter asked worriedly. Drones, Henrier said. As soon as he said that, two flying metallic objects crossed the field of their vision, a blue light shining on everything within a 90-degree angle. Just go on. Nothing to see here. Come on, Henrier said under his breath. Three more passed through the intersection. Luckily, none seemed to notice them. Henrier sighed in relief, but he still needed to hold his guard up high. They weren't supposed to be here in such fucking numbers. The info was wrong, it seems, Henrier said to himself out loud. After a few moments of waiting for good measure, Henrier pressed forward. As he crossed into the intersection, he looked to the left and right. After being sure the coast is clear, he continued forward. Just as they were going to return back into the dark alley, they heard a quick string of beeping noises from afar. It could be heard even through the glass of the fighter. "Shit, we're caught!" Henrier shouted. Just as he finished the sentence, they both heard a loud shrieking sound, soon followed by thumps. The wall next to them exploded, large holes appearing in what was a flat surface. Dust and debris hit the glass of the fighter. Henrier, thinking on his feet and realizing that accelerating in this tight space was a death sentence, the wings nearly touching the walls, was impossible. So he did what made the most sense. He turned the craft perpendicular and pushed the acceleration stick forward. The engines roared to life. Crifter was glued to his seat from the sudden and huge change of speed. They sped through the alley, Henrier doing his best not to crash the walls. He held the stick with both of his hands tightly. On the other end of that stretch of alley was another intersection, and to their dismay, more drones. Henrier sped right into them. "What are you doing?" Crifter shouted. With no reply, Henrier pressed a button on the console. Two small objects were ejected from the wings. They exploded, creating a wall of smoke right as they entered the intersection. Beeps. Henrier pushed the acceleration lever back to a near stop. He pushed his stick toward himself, going slightly to the right. The craft turned in the same perpendicular position in the intersection. With mere centimeters to spare, he managed to turn to the right, entering another alley. He pressed the acceleration lever forward again, halfway. Shrieks, followed by thumps. They were going too fast, both of them knew that. It was not a matter of if, but when they are going to crash if this keeps going on. Even an experienced pilot would have a difficult time doing these kinds of maneuvers. Crifter was well aware of that fact. He looked behind to see the drones try to find where they went through the smoke. As he flew as quickly as possible through the alleys, Henrier realized something. He made a wrong turn. "Dead end," Henrier said. "What?" Crifter responded. "Dead fucking end," Henrier said. Crifter looked forward. A wall was approaching fast. With no time to spare, Henrier pushed his stick to the right as far as it could, and he pushed the acceleration lever to the max. The engines let out a roar that probably shook the surrounding area as the old fighter rose up. Still in a perpendicular position, they rose up fast. But the wall was coming closer and closer, and just when they were about to hit it, Sky, the two suns that lit the Frindian homeworld, shone their light on the old fighter. To their dismay, this place wasn't empty. It was much wider and gave more space for maneuvers, but there were civilian ships around, and worst of all, patrols. Henrier turned the fighter straight. He kept the acceleration lever on max as he managed to dodge multiple civilian ships while going at an ungodly speed. "Go to the three hells of Diafall!" Henrier shouted in frustration as he dodged the ships just barely. He lowered the speed, pushing his acceleration lever down. He lowered the altitude of the craft so as to not be in the way of traffic. If they were caught then, they most certainly are now. "Henrier, what the hell do we do now?" Crifter yelled at him. "I know a way, don't worry, I know a way," Henrier replied as he sped up once more, as he was looking around for some kind of turn or way out of the current situation to get out of sight. He saw multiple drones up front, a lot of them. He couldn't go down, he would hit the ground, nor up because of the traffic. He needed to go straight ahead. "Crifter, get down!" Henrier shouted as he pushed the lever to the max once again. He pressed a button on his console once again, revealing a single weapon the fighter had remaining, the other ones being disassembled or rendered inoperable. He pressed the trigger on his stick. Rat-a-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. The sound of the old kinetic weapon, the sound of the ancient engines being pushed to their limit. Crifter, even though he was absolutely terrified, for the first time in a long time, he felt alive. He felt the youthful vigor return to him. That feeling of vigor was quickly diminished, replaced with another memory. An awful memory. The memory of the enemy having an upper hand. The memory of the fear of losing the men under his command. The fear of death. Beeps, and quickly followed by shrieks and thumps. This time they were metallic in nature, he saw, as the bullets ripped through the metallic frame of the craft and as they hit against the bulletproof glass. But the glass was old, it was worn, it broke, a few bullets managed to go inside. Crifter ducked and was lucky enough to evade them. They somehow managed to go through the storm of bullets unharmed. The craft was damaged and couldn't fly much longer. Diafol had mercy. Good flying soldier, Crifter said. I hope we're nearing, Crifter continued, before realizing the dire situation in front of him. Purple blood stained the cockpit. Henrier looked unresponsive. He was hit multiple times. Henrier, Crifter said. After a few seconds, which felt like an eternity, Henrier winced. He grabbed the stick tightly once again. I am... cough, cough, still. Here! He coughed out blood. By some miracle, he was still alive despite the lethal dose of lead. Crifter looked behind. The drones were still on their tail. He needed to do something. He brainstormed through his memories while being a pilot. Then he remembered. Eagle Sky, MKT-13. Explosive flares. His muscle memory did the rest. He pressed a button on the console in front of him. The screen lit up. He pressed the touch screen, which enabled the rear defenses. He enabled them. He pressed the lower trigger on his stick. He hoped to the gods that it worked, and that if it does, that this old hunk of metal was stocked with those flares. His prayers seemed to be answered because, as soon as he pressed the trigger, a flurry of objects ejected from the rear of the craft. Looking back, they looked like ordinary flares. But as soon as the drones came near, boom, 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 the flares exploded almost at the same time, destroying a good portion of the drones and making a wall of smoke. Some of the drones managed to evade that fate and went right through the smoke and continued the chase. Crifter looked back forward. He saw that they were approaching a tunnel. Come on, cough, 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 Henrier said weakly, his gaze completely focused on the front, his steady hand now shaking. The drones were getting closer and closer. The small bastards were quick. Soon enough, they were in range for the attack. Beeps. Just a little more, Henrier said, shrieking. Go! Henrier screamed. Thumps. They entered the tunnel, the bullets merely grazing the frame of the ship. Crifter looked back, looking if the drones were still on their tail. But to his relief, he saw that they stopped right at the entrance. He sighed in relief. Henrier let go of the stick with one of his hands and pressed a button on his console. This, cough, cough, is Ifkin speaking. Tunnel 6. Do you copy? This is Outpost Frindian Jaegers. We hear you loud and clear. What's your status? Is the passenger all right? Yes, Henrier said. ETA at base 1 minute. The ship won't last long. Hear you, land the craft. We're coming over to you. Do you copy? Positive, Henrier replied before pressing the button once again. Henrier slowed the ship down and slowly started going down. He no longer had the strength to hold on to the stick. Crifter grabbed his stick and slowly landed the craft on the ground. The ship slid on the hard tunnel floor before grinding to a halt, its engine sputtering out before going out completely. Henrier, they're gonna be here soon. Just hold on, kid. Crifter opened up his hatch and got out quickly. He opened up Henrier's hatch. He checked his wounds. They were bad. Really bad. It is incredible he managed to hold on for this long. Gods, just hold on. Crifter said he knew there is nothing he could do until help arrived. Though he had extensive experience in dressing wounds, he could not stop the bleeding on this. Only with special equipment was it possible to save his life. General, stop this. War, please, Henrier said. I will, son, I will. You just hold on, help is on the way. He looked deeper into the tunnel. He could see a pair of lights approach. "Henry, you see those lights? That's them, hold on." Crifter said, when he looked at Henrier, he was completely limp. He drew his last breath moments ago. He stared at him. So many. One too many. How many died, so this would never happen again? He thought to himself. Rest in peace, soldier. You've done your duty well. The pair of lights approached. It was a smaller civilian ship. As it got close, a hatch opened. "General, are you well?" a person inside said. Yes, I am, but..." "What's the situation with the deployments?" Crifters asked. "Sir, we're too late. They entered warp an hour ago. If our contacts are correct," the person said. Crifter felt like his heart would explode. He felt like he failed everyone. His people. Hell, even the humans. Never in his life did he feel this powerless, as he did now. He was a fugitive on his home planet, being shot at and betrayed by the very people he swore to protect at all costs. He was a soldier who lost, felt that he lost the edge. Old age withered the little fight he had left in him. "Sir, we need to go. There is still something we can do. We need your help with that," the person said. "All right, let's go." Crifter jumped off the wing of the craft, looking back at the old hunk of metal that saved his life, and most importantly, its pilot. Was his sacrifice in vain? No. "I won't let it be. Henrier, I'll remember that name. I may not be the soldier I once was. My body is weak, but my mind remains sharp. If brute force won't do, I'll play their game. I'll show them who Crifter Anrided Perendian is. They took away my brother. They took away my nephew. I won't let them take away my people. I will become the scourge of the gods if need be." They never lost. Chapter 4. Battle of Achilles Station. The Palace Hall. The shining white marble was carved by hand centuries ago. It was a testament to both the power of the royal family and their patronage of the arts. It was one of the most serene of places, akin to a temple. Once it brought awe and inspiration into the hearts of many who entered those halls. Today it only brings dread. "What do you mean he escaped?" the young emperor shouted at the small group of soldiers who came to the palace personally to inform him of the situation. "My emperor, your uncle has escaped the confines of the prison, allegedly by the use of an old decommissioned fighter. Who organized it or how we do not now as of the... Find out! Now! I swear to all the gods that heads will roll if you do not find him soon. I want everyone even remotely connected to this plot executed. That is an order!" the emperor shouted at his servants. These soldiers stood still, their faces stoic. But if they were human, they would have been sweating bullets from the stress. "Yes, my emperor. We shall find him and everyone involved," the officer said. He looked at his soldiers with an expression that said, "We will find him, right?" "Good. You are dismissed." The emperor calmed down, sat back on his throne, and sighed. The soldiers hastily exited the palace. "Kamaz, what's the situation on the front?" the emperor asked. From behind the throne, the silhouette of a person appeared. "My lord, all is going smoothly. Soon the fleets will exit warp near the border stations, the largest of them being Achilles Station. Though large, it is not nearly as well defended. It is guaranteed it will fall within hours, or less," the person said. "Excellent. Though once they see our fleet, they will probably surrender immediately. I hope the humans aren't that dumb to throw their lives to just slow down the inevitable," the emperor said while massaging his temples. "My lord, there is nothing to stress about. The human military has been defunded since the end of the War of Heaven, while our military stood strong for the entire duration of the peace. They will kiss our flag with time, do not worry," the person said. "I hope you're right." "Ugh, what am I saying? Of course you are. You have never been wrong thus far." "I trust your judgment," the emperor replied. The cloaked figure merely nodded at the response. before retreating back into the darkness. Soon enough, a notification popped up on the throne screen. The Emperor saw it. It was about the information on the front. He tapped the notification. A screen appeared in front of him. Admiral Hasgorn wrote a note informing the Emperor of the current situation. It read as follows. My Emperor, as of writing, we will be exiting warp within half an hour. By the time you receive this, we will be out of warp. We will execute your orders to take the station and minimize damage to the station. My contingent will be taking Achilles Station. We are 80 ships strong, including the capital ship I commandeer. Within the end of the month, we expect to be near Proxima Centauri. The Emperor nodded. He was late. But this will do. The Emperor started writing a message back. Good. Proceed with the operation. Terran Federation Achilles Station, 22:03 hours, Earth time, EST. There was a dreadful silence in the communications room. Now, almost all of the personnel were armed and wore their spacesuits in case of depressurization. Thankfully, they could do all their tasks without much trouble due to the suits being designed with practicality in mind, while not sacrificing their utility. Hayashi, what's the situation? Trevor asked while still looking at the graphs on the screen, cold sweat on his face. We managed to mobilize around 500 men to defend the station. We have approx 72 fighter craft. The station guns have been brought up to full operational status, Hayashi replied. Great. We now wait. Schmidt, tell me what's going on here. Trevor pointed at the screen. Sir, they should come out of warp at any moment. I can't tell now precisely, but... Wait, Schmidt said. He saw something. There are fluctuations in the immediate area. They're exiting warp, Schmidt said, finally breaking his sight from his screen. What's the status on reinforcements? Trevor asked. 10 hours at the minimum. Sir, do I have permission to join the fight? Schmidt said. No, you stay here and relay the situation back to the military. Proxima Base, is it? Trevor replied. Yes, sir, it's the Proxima Base. Good, you have your orders, Trevor said, turning to the rest of the crew. As for the rest of you, go into your positions. I need the guns manned. I need the fighters in the void as soon as possible. Is that understood? Trevor yelled. Yes, sir. The reply resounded in unison. Soon enough, everyone ran to their positions, readying themselves for a siege that will go on in history. Territory of the Terran Federation, outskirts of Sector 7 Achilles Station capital ship. Arvinid Gwitch, control tower. The ship shook violently as the initial stages of warp exit began. The Admiral sat, fiddling with his fingers nervously. Soon enough, a voice started counting down, exiting warp in T-minus 10-9-8-7. The Admiral took a deep breath and braced himself for the exit. 6-5-4-3-2-1, exiting warp. The ship shook. Even more, a whistling sound could be heard that began high-pitched, but soon started to be deeper and deeper. The sound reached a crescendo, and with it came into sight the static blackness of space. Soon enough, other ships started appearing beside them. Check status, the Admiral said. Checking his screen once more, he saw a notification. The Emperor replied. Upon seeing the message, he sighed and looked at his crew with a sunken expression. Engine status positive, one voice said. Pressure status positive, another said. Weapon system positive, said the last voice. The Admiral nodded. Status on the rest of the fleet? The Admiral asked. Give me a moment. A voice said. All is positive. Good. Check the frequency and connect me with Achilles Station. I'll lay the terms of surrender. Within moments, a reply to the order arrived. Sir, you're connected. The Admiral nodded, then began speaking into his microphone. He assumed the humans had a translator, so he began speaking Phrygian. This is Admiral Hasgorn. Under the orders of Emperor Mab Plentin of the Phrygian Empire, you are obligated to lay down your weapons and surrender. You will be treated according to Intergalactic Law of Warfare and Conflict Section 11, page 89. If you do not comply, we will be authorized to use force. I repeat, if you do not comply, we are authorized to use force. The Admiral finished. There was static on the other end for minutes on end. The Admiral grew frustrated and impatient. He activated his microphone once more. If you do not reply within the next 10 minutes, we will take your answer as no, which means we will board the station. Is that understood? The Admiral said, the frustration in his voice evident. Right after that, a reply came in broken Phrygian. According to Intergalactic Law Section 7, page 47, infringement of territory or breaking of territorial integrity of any sovereign nation without permission counts as a high offense in the Intergalactic Court with the penalty of sanctions. Repeated offenses may give permission to the sovereign nation whose territorial integrity is broken to legally retaliate militarily. And according to Intergalactic Law Section 11 of War and Conflict, page 22, infringement of any territory of a sovereign nation or illegal occupation of any territory of any sovereign nation without a prior declaration of war, with or without a valid reason, counts as a high offense in the Intergalactic Court, will result in sanctions and the legal permission for immediate military retaliation. I recommend that you send the aforementioned information to your Emperor. If you had not followed those laws, how can we trust you to follow the rest? The Admiral sat, looking at his screen. He knew the Sub they were right, but there was nothing he could do. Deploy fighters and boarding crews. We are going in, the Admiral replied, Achilles Station Control Tower. Trevor pressed a button on the console, disconnecting the microphone. He did not expect a reply. Sir, when did you learn Frindian? Schmidt asked. Long story. I'll get going now. Good luck, Trevor said. To you as well, sir, Schmidt replied, before looking back at his screen. He saw a sharp rise in activity in the enemy fleet. They are deploying fighters, probably boarding crews. He sent the info back into the hangar where now the pilots were entering their craft. 200, 300, 400, Schmidt said to himself. He tapped on one of the screens. This is Achilles Station, speaking to Proxima. The hostile fleet is deploying fighter craft, most likely boarding craft as well. Estimated numbers are between 450 and 500. Achilles Station Hangar Bay. A flurry of activity, dozens of people rushing to the craft, arms and munitions were being distributed between soldiers. There were some civilian volunteers among those ranks. Trevor Macaulay walked with a quick pace through the hangar. As he walked, he failed to notice another person going the opposite way. They bumped into each other. Sorry, a man, younger than Trevor, said. No worries, you a pilot? Trevor stopped the man. Yes, I forgot something. I'll be in the fighter soon, the man replied. Hurry up then, Trevor replied before turning around and storming out of sight. The young man continued his quick pace to the other side of the hangar. Once he arrived at some crates, he grabbed a bag, opened it, and retrieved something. A photo. On it was the face of the young man and woman. Between them was a young child, no more than 2 years old. Once he grabbed the photo, he ran back toward the craft. In one hand was his helmet, and in the other was the photo. Once he arrived at his fighter, he hopped on the wing and entered. He closed the hatch and put his helmet on. He put the photo inside a crack between two consoles. Hangar depressurization in 1 minute. An automated robotic voice resounded throughout the hangar. He could see as the ones remaining in the hangar rushed out, leaving only the pilots in the fighters. Moments passed, and soon enough the man could hear a loud hiss. The hangar door started opening. He lit up his craft, and the engines came to life, as did the 20 or so others in this hangar, though their sound was nullified due to lack of air. He got a notification on his console screen. The map of the soon-to-be battlefield appeared. He saw red dots, hundreds of them, approach their position. His eyes went wide in shock. He looked at the photo. He grabbed the stick of his craft tightly. In front of him, the other fighters began exiting the hangar into the black void beyond. He pushed the acceleration lever and began to exit the hangar. As he exited at a great speed, he turned left, trying to stay in formation with the other craft. Visual on hostiles, he heard someone in his comms. Positive, he replied. He looked into the void. Thousands of kilometers away, there was the hostile fleet. Despite the distance, he could see the enemy capital ship, a hulking mass of metal with dozens of other ships around it. And to his dismay, he saw hundreds of dots in the distance. Confirming that the radar was indeed correct, he looked left, and he saw other fighters exit other hangars in formation. The enemy approached at high speed, and soon enough they were in range. The AA guns lit up on the station, hundreds of streaks of light silently traveling at high speed through the void. Ready for contact, a voice in his comm said. He tapped on his screen. Weapons appeared on the wings of his craft and one on its nose. Ready, he replied. He put his finger on the trigger, one sentence repeating in his head. Hold, no matter the cost, Achilles Station hallway. C2 Trevor held onto his rifle, 3 more men behind him. To the left was a window looking out into the void. Now the sight to behold was that of a battle of epic proportions. Hundreds of fighters, enemy transports, and the like flew about. Thousands of streaks of light with an occasional blast of light. An enemy or ally dead. The battle raged for 2 hours. The Phrygian fleet kept sending more and more fighters and transports. They seemed to have endless supplies of the things, soldiers as well. The station would have fallen if they wanted to completely destroy it, but it seems they want it intact. "Schmidt, what's the situation outside?" Trevor asked into his helmet microphone. "We lost at least 80 craft. The remaining fighters aren't going to hold on for too long." "What's the enemy casualties?" "My best estimate is about 200 fighters, and transports might be more. Looking at the wreckage, a new batch of enemy transports is incoming." "Copy that," Trevor replied, looking at his men. "Hayashi, they are going to breach the entrance at the end of the hall, though I'm more worried about hallway B. Hayashi, link up with Michaels in hall B and we can take it from here," Trevor said, looking at Hayashi. "Are you sure?" Hayashi asked. "Absolutely positive. Godspeed." "Godspeed, sir," Hayashi replied, before running off. Trevor ducked down behind a thick metal table they managed to get out of one of the offices. They welded it to the floor. "Guys, get into position. We're expecting visitors anytime soon." 10 minutes later, Trevor could see outside the small, thick glass window that the streaks of light stopped, save for the still active AA. He saw the ships get closer. Soon enough, he heard an explosion from above. "What was that?" one of the men asked. "They're hitting the AA. Don't worry about it. Focus on the end of the hall," Trevor replied. Minutes passed. With more explosions from above, the AA was almost entirely destroyed. Then suddenly they heard it. Asterisk, click, asterisk. Asterisk, click, asterisk. Asterisk, thump, asterisk. "Hold," Trevor said, pointing his rifle to the door. "Tssss, hold. Psh, asterisk. Boom, asterisk." The doors flew open from an explosion, and shrapnel from the metal doors flew across the hallways. "Fire!" Trevor shouted. He pressed down on the trigger and released the full force of the automatic rifle on whoever dared step foot at the station. The sound of the rifle fire was muffled by his helmet, otherwise he would have gone deaf alongside his men. He focused his eyes on the opening. He saw dozens of Phrygian soldiers mass into the hallway. They cut down some, but soon enough a blue force field appeared in front of them, protecting them from the gunfire. They still kept on shooting in hopes that the force field could withstand so much. But time was of the essence. "I'm shooting the window! Cover me!" Trevor peeked out from his cover and fired at one of the thick windows on the other side of the hall, just where the Phrygians were. He shot once, twice. That thing wasn't breaking that easily. It was designed as such. But he was adamant. He kept shooting until asterisk, crack, asterisk. The sound of air escaping the hall at high speed was heard. The Phrygian holding up the force field was sucked up head first into the broken window. He was too large to be sucked out. His helmet glass broke, and he suffocated instantly, at the same time creating a plug so the air won't escape. That worked, Trevor thought to himself. But he couldn't count his lucky stars just yet. The enemy finally opened fire. He took cover behind the metal table. Thankfully, it was thick enough to withstand the hailstorm for now. One of his men peeked out and shot forward. He brought one enemy down, his bullet going straight through the helmet glass and into the Phrygian's brain. The other soldier did the same, Trevor as well. That was on repeat for nearly half an hour. The Phrygians managed to find cover in the adjacent rooms, at least where they were able to break through. As the gunfight continued, Trevor sat down behind the metal table next to one of his men. "Schmidt, what's the status?" he shouted into his helmet mic. "Sir, Hall A, B, C, D, and E are still holding. I've lost contact with F and G. Hall H has fallen back to Hall J. Hangar 3 has been breached as well." Schmidt replied. "Shit!" Trevor yelled, before rising up and taking a couple of pot shots at the enemy. "Schmidt, what's the ETA for the 14th Fleet?" Trevor said. 5 to 6 hours, sir," Schmidt replied. "Sir, are we going to hold on for that?" One of his 3 men started saying before seeing a flash of light. The man was shot straight through his cover, a metal pillar. His arm was torn off and a portion of his torso was eviscerated. Jesus Christ, another said. You fucking assholes, I'll kill you! He rose up from his cover and started firing at the enemy. You fucking idiot, get down! Trevor shouted, but before he could do anything, the man was shot in the shoulder and another flash of light appeared. Before Trevor could blink, the man's head was gone. God fucking damn it! Trevor yelled. He looked at the remaining soldier next to him. We need to retreat. Jesus, how? He continued. I've got an idea. The soldier grabbed a grenade from his person. Kid, you're going to blow us all up into Kingdom Come. Trevor said to him, I'm going to blow myself up, sir. You go on through the door and lock the hatch. I'm going to be the sponge. You're more valuable to the defense than I. The soldier said, holding the grenade in his hand. Trevor looked at him with disbelief. He wanted to tell him that he is as invaluable as any other soldier, every man and woman here, but there was no time. He couldn't lose another. He hated that. But with the fast-approaching footsteps, he had no other choice. All right, Trevor said. On my mark. The soldier took a deep breath. He counted with his fingers. 3, 2, 1, go, the soldier said. He released the pin of the grenade and got out of his cover completely, running at the enemy. He fired his rifle randomly with one hand, screaming at the top of his lungs. The Frindians hesitated for a moment, then opened fire, shooting at the soldier. Trevor rushed toward the door. Getting to the other side, he pressed a button, and the door closed slowly. The soldier was shot at least a dozen times, but he was still standing. The Frindians stopped firing, probably being stumped as to how the human was still standing. See you, in hell, the soldier said. He let go of the grenade, and it dropped onto the floor the very moment Trevor locked the hatch on the door. Retreat! One of the Frindians shouted, but it was too little too late. Boom! The explosion ripped apart a good portion of the hall and created a hole in the wall of the station. The remaining Frindians were sucked out within moments, and those who held on to something quickly followed. Trevor looked through the small window of the door. Schmidt, Hall B is destroyed. I'm falling back to Hayashi and Michaels. Copy? Hear you. They will appreciate the help. Hours later, Achilles Station Control Tower. A lone figure sat in the control tower, surrounded by various screens. The doors were barricaded shut. There were crates haphazardly placed all over the room. The figure spoke into a microphone. His voice was shaky. This is Lawrence Schmidt speaking to Proxima Base. Halls B through H had been breached. He paused. Are there still civilians on the station? Someone replied. As I've said, everyone who wanted to leave left before they arrived. Okay, what's the situation in Hall J? Schmidt paused before replying. Hold on. He pressed another button on the panel in front of him. Trevor, how's J holding? Schmidt asked. He waited for a response for a few seconds. Could be better, Trevor replied, his voice barely audible through the gunfire. How long can you hold? Schmidt asked. I don't know. We're surrounded. Shit! Trevor exclaimed. Hayashi's down! Another voice could be heard vaguely on the other side. Listen, Lawrence, right? Been nice working with you. I'll go ahead and... Explosion! I'll go ahead and slow him down for you. You did a great job. Hold on tight, Trevor said. Goodbye, Trevor McCauley. It has been nice, Schmidt replied. Yeah, have a taste of this, you fuck! The link cut. Schmidt could hear a large explosion in the distance. The whole station shook. This is Lawrence Schmidt, speaking to Proxima Base. How long until reinforcements? ETA is set about an hour to 2 hours. They are currently in the warp as we speak. What's your status? The voice replied. Hall J fell. I'm the only one remaining, I think, Schmidt said. There was static on the other side. He could hear footsteps on the other side of the barricaded doors. Proxima Base, do I have permission to leave station? Schmidt asked. There was static for a few more seconds before a reply came. Permission granted. Schmidt got up from his seat, stretched, and grabbed his rifle. He checked it. It was loaded. He could hear them start to plant something on the door. Schmidt crouched behind one of the control panels and aimed his rifle at the doors. He waited. Soon enough, a small explosion swung the doors wide open. The improvised barricades proved themselves useless. Schmidt waited until one of the Frindians peered through. He shot him right in the head. Another soon entered and fired. Schmidt put his head down. He went prone and crawled to the side of the control panel. He took his shot and shot the Frindian in the shoulder. The back and forth went on for a good 15 minutes. Schmidt took 7 Frindian lives during that 15 minutes. methodically changing his position, not letting a single one through those doors. But exhaustion soon made him sloppy. He looked at the door to see if any still wanted to try and get into the control tower, but he was met with a bullet into his throat. He fell down, clutching his bleeding throat and gurgling on his own blood. The Frindian stormed into the control tower, ignoring his suffering as he slowly choked on his blood. Soon enough, Schmidt died in a pool of his own blood. "Call the Admiral, the station is taken," one of the Frindians said. "Yes, I'm on it," said another. "What's with the crates?" someone else asked. "Should we check them?" the first said. Without permission, he went up to one of the crates to open them. "Don't open them! We don't con—" Boom! A massive explosion engulfed the control tower, destroying what little of the station remained still intact, killing most of the Frindian soldiers on the station, while leaving those left stranded and in need of rescue. That's what one would call martyrdom. Drop a live grenade when killed. They never lost. Chapter 5. Turning Point Earth, 1132. Hours, Earth time, EST. A large and spacious room with an oval table. Around it, in leather chairs, sat men with grim expressions on their faces. These are the leaders of human civilization. And at the helm of the table sat a man who stared at the table while massaging his temples. He was well-dressed and well-groomed. Yet, his eyes told another story. This man was tired. The bags under his eyes indicated that he had many sleepless nights. "Secretary General!" someone from the other side of the table uttered. "Our partial mobilization efforts have bore fruit. We have several new regiments on the front. We ramped up weapons production and secured a front line on the fringes of Sector 7 and Sector 6. The Secretary General slowly nodded and then raised his head, placing his hands on the table. "What about Sector 5? he asked. We're working on it. As of now, Sector 5 as a whole is a contested area." The Secretary General nodded once more. "All right. Minister Dawson, how is the public reacting to this series of events?" A man at the side of the table stood up. "We are trying to keep morale high. We are currently holding casualty reports out of the public eye, but it is a matter of time before they will demand us to release the reports," Minister Dawson said. The Secretary General looked around the table before gesturing the minister to sit back down. "We can't lie to the people. What they will demand is action." "Minister Ibrahimovic, what are the casualty reports?" "According to our best estimates, 20,000, though those figures might be higher." "Minister Ibrahimovic, those figures are higher. We were caught by surprise. Despite having information on a possible declaration of war, I expected at least some kind of incident. A casus belli, not an abrupt invasion without a single reason given." The Secretary General looked around the table once more before continuing. "We are not dealing with a border skirmish, ladies and gentlemen. We are in a state of war, and the very existence of the Terran Federation and all of its constituent territories is at risk. We have the support of the intergalactic community, yes, but it is up to us to hold and resist until the Galactic House votes on how to react. And that might take a month, maybe more." Silence befell the room as the reality of the situation slowly started to be apparent to everyone present. "Sir, what is it you want us to do?" one voice asked somewhere from the table. A slight tremble with a hint of uncertainty. "Total mobilization of all of our military assets from every corner of the Terran Federation. Secure all the trade lanes and supply routes. Put all intelligence operatives within and outside our territory on high alert, and utilize every resource available to gauge the military organization and capability of the Frindians," the Secretary General said. Murmurs and whispers erupted in the room. This was unprecedented. Meanwhile, the Secretary General slid his hand through his graying hair and cleared his throat. "I am announcing an emergency broadcast. Connect me to all available stations." Within moments, all voices and mutters fell silent. A large holographic screen appeared before the Secretary General. He was silent for a few seconds as he stared at a mirror image of himself. This was not the way he wanted to present himself to the public, but he had no other choice. "This is Christopher Allen, Secretary General of the Terran Federation, broadcasting from Earth. As you are well aware, there had been a string of incidents on the border with the Frindian Empire. Those incidents were not mistakes. They were not accidents. They were a deliberate act of aggression against the Terran Federation from the Phrygian Empire. These acts are unlawful. They are illegal. All attempts at diplomacy have failed, and from this moment on, officially, we are in a state of war with the Phrygian Empire. There was a slight pause. The Secretary General closed his eyes for a moment before opening them up again. From this moment on, we are instituting total mobilization of all military assets. We are going to do everything in our power to defend our freedom against tyranny. Defeat is not an option. Do not fret, do not worry, for mankind has gone through worse. We have prevailed, and we shall prevail once more. We will remind our foes once more how humans wage war. Phrygian homeworld 108 hours after Achilles Station. The underground sewers of the Phrygian capital. Abandoned centuries ago, these veritable catacombs became home to outcasts and vagabonds. In these tunnels, since the ascension of the new emperor, a new type of inhabitant called this place home. The freedom fighter. The revolutionary. General Crifter sat back in an old and decrepit chair as he listened to the briefing of what these young Phrygians knew. He would once call them terrorists, criminals. Those who went against the crown went against everything Phrygia stood for, but now instead of rounding them up and sending them to the deepest pits, they were his only ticket to freedom. They were the only ticket that provided any semblance of hope against the emperor's tyranny. From what we've been able to gather, the Emperor Mab Pletin's actions are not his own. He is merely a puppet in someone else's game. There are rumors that advisor Dibinadwi is somehow connected. The Red Scales Phrygian, dressed in an old military uniform, wasn't able to finish his sentence before General Crifter interrupted. It is not Dibinadwi. I am sure of that. That man is too incompetent to do his own work, let alone to do any shady dealings behind anyone's back, let alone imperial intelligence, Crifter remarked. That's true, but the best he can do in that case is shut up if there is something happening. If he knows something, a simple threat or bribe is enough to shut him up. Crifter thought for a few moments, scratching the scales on the back of his head. You might be right. If we can't be sure or even trust the very men who were tasked with such a responsibility as to protect this country and advise the emperor, then who can we trust, other than the few members of military who aren't scared of the consequences? What say you, Reedid? The Red Scales Phrygian, Reedid, answered without hesitation. There is only one thing we can do, then. The only other group with which we share a common enemy, which we can only hope won't stab us in the back, is, well, humans. As soon as Reedid said that, a voice from the group shouted, Humans? Do you really think that they will cooperate with any Phrygian after all of this? They will see us with great suspicion, and in the worst case, kill us. No species with a modicum of intelligence is dumb enough to trust, let alone cooperate with an enemy race, even if they share common goals. Another voice joined in soon thereafter. Yeah, and how can we even start cooperating? How can we even get into contact with the humans? That plan is a joke. After the crowd vented out their frustrations and calmed down, Crifter stood up from his chair and cleared his throat. Gentlemen, I am afraid that Reedid is right. He paused, awaiting backlash, but none came. I sympathize with your worries. The humans can't trust any of us. We are at war with the Terran Federation, but you fail to understand one thing about the humans. He turned and looked at everyone present. The humans have a much more flexible way of working with others. As long as you are of use, no matter your race or species, and can, of course, be trusted, you will have a great ally. I do not mean to brag when I tell you this, but without me, you probably wouldn't stand a chance of getting the humans on your side. Like all of you said, no intelligent being is insane enough to cooperate with an enemy, but right here they have the greatest inside network they could have ever hoped for. And as for me, I worked with the humans. I have fought with them. I am well known among them, and I have a good enough reputation, so the chances that they will accept us is much higher. There was murmuring in the crowd, whispers. The group was split on what to do. Someone from the group then spoke up. That is all well and good, General. But where in the nine hells are we going to find a human here? Or even get into contact with a human? All incoming and outgoing transmissions are monitored. Crifter smiled and let out a small chuckle before replying, Well, young one, that is very simple. We will not come to them, they will come to us. And it is worth mentioning that there are humans here. They are near, especially now. It is only a matter of time. Earth Veterans Memorial, Hamburg, 1524 hours CET. And to the brave men who stood their ground till the bitter end, Sergeant Trevor Macaulay, Officer Sota Hayashi, and the last man standing, Private Lawrence Schmidt. These are the names that will forever be remembered for their bravery. These were the words spoken by the chief of the military a few days after Achilles Station. Within the crowd that listened on that sunny Hamburg day was a man dressed formally, yet comfortably, slowly smoking a cigarette as he listened to the speech. "It's weird, isn't it?" someone beside the man said, "to see history unfold right before your very eyes." The man took one last drag of the cigarette and extinguished it on the floor, before retrieving a small box and putting the cigarette butt inside. "Indeed it is. Not the first time for me, though. You kind of get used to it after a while," the man dressed in black said. "You military? Special forces?" the man beside him asked. The man dressed in black looked at him. "Something like that," he said before turning around and leaving, weaving through the crowd and going back on the main street. He walked down the street. It was well decorated with trees lining each side. A nice stroll in the shade sat well after a depressing speech. He sat on a bench, looking out to the park across the street where children played, while their parents chatted. He smiled. He got a pack of cigarettes out and put one in his mouth, but before he could light it up, he heard a ring in his ear. "Ah, Jesus! What now?" he said with exasperation. He pressed something behind his ear, and a holographic screen appeared before him. It was not visible to anyone but himself. "Yeah, Chief, I'm on vacation, you know that?" "Agent Walter Meyer, your vacation is over. You heard the orders of the Secretary General." The hidden face and deep voice from the other side said, "All agents on high alert. Yes, that is clear." Walter replied, "Any updates on my mission?" "No, your mission is canceled. You have been given a very special mission, Agent Meyer. We believe you are the only one available who is up to the task." "And what kind of task would that be?" Walter asked. "You are going to be smuggled through one of the few lanes that are still open. By that I mean we have utilized a few connections on the other side of the law. Your mission is to conduct espionage and find out what you can about the royal family, as well as attempt sabotage if possible." Walter sighed. "All right, not something I'm unfamiliar with. I assume I am going to the Phrygian frontier. Wait, royal family? Where am I going exactly?" "Bide Kartref, the Phrygian homeworld. Your ride is waiting for you outside of Hamburg. Be there at 16:30 sharp. I'll send you the coordinates. Good luck, soldier." "Looks like there's no vacation for me,"